Smash that like button. Mm-hmm. So you have to be prepared to face the justice system.
This was a scene in downtown Austin today. A large crowd gathering there, urging Texas lawmakers to condemn the American military action in Venezuela. People holding those signs opposing what they call a, quote, oil war, and chanted for the U.S. to end its involvement in that South American country. We also heard a similar message from demonstrators who gathered in Dallas, downtown Dallas last night. These are images from Main Street Garden overnight.
The United States has no business, carrying forward its policies of war on a sovereign nation. No intervention, no wars for oil, and certainly no war with Venezuela.
Venezuela.
Extraordinary rendition used to be reserved for terror suspects, not heads of state. But the USA is treating Nicolas Maduro as a dangerous criminal. As he struggled to walk after the long journey, there was no red carpet welcome for him and his wife Celia Flores. Instead, the blue perp walk runway laid on by the Drug Enforcement Agency. His only words?
Tonight, Happy New Year.
To keep up appearances.
They said this was personal for Trump. Maduro called Trump a coward publicly.
We are in a safe
Should have kept quiet.
Today, on the Sunday talk shows, Trump's new muscular foreign policy was set out by one of its strongest advocates.
This is the Western Hemisphere, this is where we live, and we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela.
What is the legal authority for the United States to be running Venezuela?
Very simple. We have court orders. These are sanctioned boats, and we get orders from courts to go after and seize these sanctions. So that's, I don't know, is the court not a legal authority?
The White House has been spinning its intervention on social media using rap.
And now you don't know, now you know.
God bless our troops!
And rock to fire up its base.
And gentlemen, start your
But in Venezuela, there have been defiant protests against what some describe as a new era of American imperialism.
We are against all the actions that the Trump government has taken over our country. We want our president back. We want the first lady back. And we are here as Venezuelans defending our sovereignty.
And this was the uncompromising message from one paramilitary group.
There's something I would like to say to you, Donald Trump. If I could go there and take justice by myself, I'll do it.
While some Venezuelans are celebrating Maduro's capture, after yesterday's airstrikes, there is also a growing sense of unease. Will what's left of this regime now crumble?
We'll have more from Dan live in Washington shortly, but first, Robert is in Cucuta near the Colombia-Venezuela border. Robert, this isn't just about Venezuela. There must be tremendous uncertainty across the region now.
That is for sure. I mean, along here, along this border zone, there is certainly a visible and more muscular military presence, and extra security forces have been deployed. A recognition this is a fateful week, not just for Venezuela, but across the region, and so many questions crowding in about that US raid. Was it really about regime change, or was it about just toppling Maduro, or was it about sending a message across the hemisphere about America's future intentions? Certainly in this small border town, Venezuelans have been out on the streets over the last 24 hours. many of them celebrating Maduro's capture by the US and cheering Trump's actions as legitimate and decisive. But you wonder, when you look at those pictures, whether that joy is premature, because tonight the regime in Venezuela appears intact. Certainly the security forces seem to have everything under control. And indeed, Venezuela's defense ministry has been addressing the nation. Vladimir Pedrino Lopez calling the US raid imperial aggression, saying it was a brutal violation of Venezuelan sovereignty, and insisting that Maduro remains a legitimate president. So, look, this is the US engaging in kind of late 19th century gunboat diplomacy, and it leaves leaders across the region from Cuba to here in Colombia wondering what and who is next.
Thank you very much. Back to Dad now in Washington. What can we expect when President Maduro appears in court tomorrow?
We're going to be a remarkable scene. He will be taken from this detention facility where he's being held with his wife, Celia Flores, in a highly protected convoy into this courthouse in Manhattan in the Southern District of New York. We understand he's already had his fingerprints and mugshot taken. We may get that mugshot released tomorrow. There'll be no cameras in court, but we will get possibly court sketches. And then the trial, he'll likely be remanded into custody, and the trial probably won't take place for many months, possibly next year. Interestingly, it will be a jury of ordinary Americans from New York who will try him, and it's not guaranteed that there will be sufficient evidence presented to prove this narco-terrorism conspiracy that the Trump administration claims. On a different note, a dark warning tonight as well to the presumptive now president, Delcy Rodriguez of Venezuela, from the president. He's given an interview to the Atlantic magazine saying if she doesn't do the right thing, she's going to pay a big price, probably bigger than Maduro, without specifying what that price is.
They want to try to fuck us up. That's what it is.
This was a scene in downtown Austin today. A large crowd gathering there, urging Texas lawmakers to condemn the American military action in Venezuela. People holding those signs opposing what they call a, quote, oil war, and chanted for the U.S. to end its involvement in that South American country. We also heard a similar message from demonstrators who gathered in Dallas, downtown Dallas last night. These are images from Main Street Garden overnight.
The United States has no business, carrying forward its policies of war on a sovereign nation. No intervention, no wars for oil, and certainly no war with Venezuela.
Trump says new Venezuelan leader could pay a very big price for not working with us. President Donald Trump warns Venezuela's acting leader, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, would pay a very big price if she does not do what's right.
You asked for more ways to create, so we made a major update. Sleeve printing is now live. You can now design
the world's largest oil reserves, sitting in a country where 30% of the population has already fled. Russian and Iranian weapons flowing in. And in August, for the first time since the 1980s, the U.S. has assembled a massive naval strike force just miles from Venezuela's coast. 8 warships, a nuclear submarine, over 4,000 Marines. Officially, it's about drugs and refugees. But here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Washington may actually be preparing to invade. Why now? Today, we're unpacking the hidden evidence, from collapsing oil pipelines to China's secret deals to the quiet troop buildups that prove why the U.S. might be closer than ever to war in its own backyard. Today's crisis didn't appear overnight. It's been decades in the making. And to really understand why Venezuela and America are now on the edge of open conflict, we need to rewind. It all started in 1999. when Hugo Chavez stormed into power promising to defy the United States. By 2002, the relationship had already collapsed. The CIA even backed a coup that briefly removed Chavez from office, a warning that U.S. intervention in Venezuela wasn't a conspiracy theory, but a reality that would haunt the next 20 years. Chavez built his entire
U.S. ain't playing, man.
in Washington, constantly painting the U.S. as an imperialist enemy. His successor, Nicolas Maduro, doubled down on that message, turning being anti-American into Venezuela's official brand. The result? A spiral of retaliation. Venezuela seized oil fields, the U.S. hit back with rising sanctions, and the 2000s turned into a slow-motion collision course that was bound to explode sooner or later. By the mid-2000s, Washington had Venezuela in its crosshairs. First came the labels, failing counter-narcotics partner. Then came the sanctions, targeting officials and allies of Hugo Chavez. And things escalated under Maduro. In 2019, the U.S. made a move straight out of a spy novel. It declared opposition leader Juan Guaido the real president of Venezuela and openly backed an attempted coup. The plan failed, but the message was clear. Every crisis, every sanction was dressed up as democracy promotion or drug control. But behind the curtain, it was always the same three motives: oil, power, and blocking Russia, China, and Iran from gaining a foothold in America's backyard. By 2025, Maduro had forced his way into a third term after a blatantly rigged election that saw thousands of opponents thrown in jail. The world condemned it, but Maduro didn't care. Now, Venezuela was completely isolated. No diplomatic ties left, no trust on either side. And that's when the real danger set in. Every supply ship, every military advisor, every frozen bank account turned into a potential spark. The entire U.S.-Venezuela relationship had become a high-stakes chess match. And one wrong move could set off open conflict. And then there's the oil. On paper, Venezuela should be filthy rich. It sits on the largest oil reserves in the world. Over 300 billion barrels, more than Saudi Arabia. In the 1990s, it pumped over 3 million barrels a day, with nearly 2 million flowing straight to the US. But today, the oil giant has collapsed to less than 20% of its peak. And here's the bizarre part. Venezuela...
Speaking of Venezuela real quick, shout out to everybody in the live right now. Hey, this is what I gotta say about Venezuela. Shout out to the people of Venezuela. The good Biden citizens of Venezuela. Well, fuck Venezuela. All the motherfucking Venians came to America, took over the Walmart Spark app. That's all it is. Yeah, man, fuck them Venians, man. Yeah, invade that motherfucking country, man. Yeah, we Americans, man. Yeah, you heard what Trump said. I warned you. Hey, I warned you. Y'all heard Trump. Yeah. Man, fuck Venezuela, man. You know what I mean? Shout out to the bonitas of Venezuela. Yeah, Venezuela, man, fuck y'all, man. Yeah. The minute go Venezuela.
Oil is so thick, it can't even flow through pipelines without being mixed with lighter fuels. So the country that has more oil than anyone else has to import fuel from Iran just to move its own crude. The system is falling apart. Over 25 pipelines, some more than 50 years old, are leaking and breaking like arteries in a dying body. Oil spills, blackouts, and plants running at less than 10% capacity are now routine. Fixing it would take $58 billion just to get back to 1990s levels. And when Caracas tried to pivot to natural gas, that boat collapsed too. The Dragon Field, a $35 billion project that could have supplied Trinidad, was abruptly cut off when Washington pulled Shell and BP's licenses in 2025.
Washington did? Boy, Americans is badass, man.
Was abruptly.
They said, you know what, fuck your connection with Trinidad, nigga. We cut all the supplies, bitch ass nigga.
Cut off when Caracas tried to pivot to natural gas. That boat collapsed too. The Dragon Field, a $35 billion project that could have supplied Trinidad, was abruptly cut off when Washington pulled Shell and BP's licenses in 2025.
In 2025, they took that license. Ha! Y'all niggas could have had some shit that got y'all shit right. Alright, they said, fuck you, nigga. You ain't getting this shit, bitch. I love it.
It was a clear message. The U.S. isn't just squeezing Maduro. It's trying to choke Venezuela's energy lifeline completely. But here's the devastating irony. Venezuela's oil collapse isn't just broken pipelines. It's a death spiral.
Oh, yeah.
Every failure means less.
I love the people of Venezuela. It's just the corrupt military that they have. You know what I'm saying? The bad people.
Money. Less money means no repairs. And no repairs means even bigger failures. In the late 1990s, state oil company PDVSA had over 40,000 trained engineers. Today, fewer than 12,000 remain. And many of them lack the expertise to run the world's heaviest crude. The real talent has fled to Canada, Colombia, and Texas, taking decades of irreplaceable knowledge with them. What's left is a nightmare. Soviet-era machines that break down weekly. Workers forced to patch leaks with improvised fixes that would horrify any safety inspector. Venezuela still sits on the biggest oil reserves on Earth, but it's become a country that literally can't extract, refine, or export its own resources.
Because they broke.
A so-called oil superpower that can't even power itself. The collapse of Venezuela's oil sector unleashed something almost unheard of outside of wartime, an economy in free fall. The numbers are staggering. Just 2 decades ago, Venezuela's GDP sat around $300 billion. By 2025, barely $110 billion.
Damn.
A collapse on par with the Great Depression. And inflation, at one point, it wasn't just high, it was absurd. Prices spiraled so fast that annual inflation hit over 1 million %. People carried stacks of cash that couldn't even buy a loaf of bread. By 2024, it cooled to around 48%. But forecasters are already expected to rocket back toward 200% in 2025.
Imagine being able to build a head with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want, and watch it take shape.
I'm going back on another 3-day diet. I just wanted to go crazy on a fat ass salad today.
Or better than anything. 10 years ago, one US dollar cost 6 bolivars. By the end of 2024, 52. And on the street where most Venezuelans actually trade, the dollar is already worth closer to 95. The government's solution? Print bigger bills. New 200 and 500 bolivar notes. Even digital money experiments. But none of it matters because the dollar has become the only real currency Venezuelans can trust. And when it comes to the social impact, it is staggering beyond comprehension. Food, medicine, even electricity, things most countries take for granted, are now scarce. By 2023, surveys showed that 82% of Venezuelans were worried about running out of food. Almost half the country faced...
That's okay. Give me all them fine, bad fucking Venezuelan hoes. Yeah, baby. You trying to, your lights and shit going out. How much it cost? Oh, papi, it's going to cost me 200 bolivars. I said, baby, is that what y'all currency called? Yes, papi, bolivars. Hey, ChatGPT, this little bonita said her lights about to go out and she can't pay rent, and she said it's gonna cost her a total of 400 bolivars. How much is that converted into USD? Okay, 400 bolivars converted to USD is $6.47. That's it? $6? Oh, man. Pay that, baby. Come here.
For it to severe hunger. The poverty line, officially over 50%. Independent estimates put it closer to 70%. 7 out of 10 people trapped in poverty in what was once South America's richest nation. But the most shocking figure is this. Nearly 1 in 3 Venezuelans have fled the country. As of 2025, the UN counts 7.9 million Venezuelans living abroad, the second largest refugee crisis in the world after Syria. That's a human tide bigger than the population of Switzerland. On the move. Colombia alone now hosts 2.5 million refugees. Peru, almost 2 million. Millions more are scattered across Brazil, the Caribbean, and even making the dangerous trek north to the US border. And here's the cruel twist. While Venezuela's economy imploded at home, its refugee crisis exploded abroad, destabilizing entire regions and even reshaping American politics. The human tide has become so overwhelming that in 2023, the U.S. announced plans to revoke temporary protected status for over 300,000 Venezuelan migrants. This came into effect in April 2025 and sparked fears of potentially forcing mass deportations back to a country in freefall. So these were homegrown challenges and consequences. But what was happening worldwide, particularly with alliances? As Venezuela's economy collapsed, Maduro reached out for lifelines. But the countries answering his calls weren't friends of Washington. Russia, China, and Iran all stepped in, seizing the chance to turn Venezuela into a strategic outpost in America's backyard. And then came the moment that sent shockwaves through Western intelligence. In May 2025, Maduro stood in Moscow and signed a sweeping 10-year strategic partnership with Russia. It covered everything: energy, financial aid, advanced technology, and most alarmingly, military cooperation. Venezuela's own foreign minister bragged it was the first time in history a Latin American nation had signed a deal of this scale with Russia. State TV hammered the point home. Military ties were now a top priority. To U.S. analysts, this wasn't just a desperate move by a crumbling regime. It was the opening chapter of a proxy war in the Western Hemisphere. First, Russia. Moscow quietly shipped spare parts to keep Venezuela's aging fleet of Soviet-era fighter jets flying, and began upgrading its air defenses. Intelligence sources now say Russian military advisors are embedded on the ground, with even joint weapons factories under discussion. Next, China. Beijing reopened crucial oil credit lines, giving Maduro access to hard currency he desperately needed. In spring 2025, Venezuela's vice president flew to Beijing to negotiate sweeping new oil deals with China's state giant CNPC. At the UN, China has shielded Maduro again and again, vetoing resolutions, while at the same time pouring money into infrastructure projects designed to lock up Venezuelan resources for decades. But perhaps the most combustible partner of all is Iran. Since 2021, Tehran has supplied refinery technology, signed nearly $500 million in contracts, and even helped overhaul Venezuela's largest refineries. At one point, the two countries struck a bizarre 2-to-1 oil swap deal. Venezuela shipped out 2 barrels of crude for every single barrel of refined product Iran sent back. The deal collapsed when Caracas couldn't meet quotas.
Caracas couldn't meet quotas.
Even more desperate for Iranian support. And now, alarmingly, intelligence reports say Iranian drones, anti-ship missiles, and small naval vessels have already made their way into Venezuela's arsenal. Add to this the thousands of Cuban security advisors still embedded in the government, plus Colombian guerrilla groups and narco cartels who operate freely across the border. The result? Venezuela is no longer just a failing state. It's becoming a forward operating base for America's enemies, right in the U.S.'s own hemisphere. But what does President Donald Trump have to say about all this? When he returned to the White House in January 2025, Washington wasted no time tightening the screws. Oil waivers were scrapped, Chevron's license gone, Venezuela's last reliable revenue streams cut off overnight. But the real shock came on July 25th, 2025. For the first time in American history, the U.S. Treasury labeled an entire foreign military leadership, Venezuela's so-called Cartel de los Soles, as a global terrorist organization. Every asset frozen, every bank transfer criminalized. No military in the world had ever been hit with that label before. At the same time, Trump doubled the bounty on Nicolas Maduro's to an outrageous $50 million, while quietly ordering the Pentagon to prepare military options. By late August, those options suddenly looked real. A U.S. Naval strike group, 7 warships, and a nuclear submarine moved into the southern Caribbean. It was the largest American show of force in the region since the 1980s. The lineup was no token patrol, 3 Aegis destroyers, a guided missile cruiser, and the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima, carrying 4,500 troops, including 2,200 Marines with helicopters and amphibious vehicles. Enough firepower to seize beaches, neutralize air defenses, and topple a government in days. On paper, Washington still insisted this was about drugs and refugees. But the buildup sent a louder message. This looked less like policing cartels and more like preparing for war. By the start of September, the stage was set for a showdown the Western Hemisphere hasn't seen in decades. U.S. officials kept repeating there would be no boots on the ground, but behind the scenes, they were quietly stockpiling multiple invasion blueprints. The naval strike group offshore was overwhelming. The USS Iwo Jima carried an entire military expeditionary unit, complete with attack helicopters and, again, amphibious vehicles. Essentially, a floating invasion force. The Aegis destroyers alongside it, they could wipe out Venezuela's air defense in hours. Caracas knew what this meant. Satellite images released by Venezuela itself showed frantic preparations. New defense corridors carved around oil facilities, coastal radar systems reinforced, and dozens of small gunboats patrolling the shoreline. And then came the most serious move yet. President Maduro personally toured border states, deploying 15,000 troops to Colombia's frontier. At a September press conference, Maduro delivered his most defiant warning yet. He claimed the U.S. had positioned 8 warships, a submarine, and over 1,200 missiles within striking distance of Venezuela. Whether or not his numbers were exaggerated, one thing was clear. Caracas believed an invasion was no longer speculation. It was imminent. Maduro vowed that if American forces crossed the line, Venezuela would unleash a Republican arms. That meant mobilizing not just the army, but millions of civilians for guerrilla warfare. In his words, the entire population would become a battlefield. And what was offshore was no bluff. The amphibious assault ship, USS Iwo Jima, as we said, carried a full Marine expeditionary unit. But it was officially on hurricane watch duty. Just behind it, the nuclear submarine, USS Newport News, worked as a silent deterrent to any Russian or Chinese response. The message from both sides could not have been more obvious. Venezuela was preparing to fight for survival, while Washington had assembled the tools to take it down in days. Most telling, the guided missile cruiser USS Lake Erie transited the Panama Canal on August 29th, specifically to join the Caribbean Task Force, an asset typically reserved for high-intensity conflicts requiring advanced air defense capabilities. Pentagon sources privately acknowledge this represents the largest U.S. naval concentration in Caribbean waters since the 1980s interventions in Grenada and Panama. Roughly 4,500 American personnel, including elite Marines and naval aviators, now operate within hours of Venezuelan territory while conducting increasingly aggressive training exercises with Caribbean partners. So hopefully we painted a big enough picture of what's happening right now. But there are some crazy facts that can't be skipped over here. Ones that explain just why Venezuela has become such a Venezuela. 304 billion barrels of proven crude, 18% more than Saudi Arabia. Yet it produces less than 10% of its historic peak. Why? Because the oil is so dense and sulfurous that pulling it out of the ground often costs more than it can be sold for. It's the paradox of the world's richest reserves trapped in a country that can't afford to use them. The result has been catastrophic.
Ever dreamed of leaving a ground level life behind? At US Aviation Academy, your first takeoff happens on day 1, guided by FAA certified instructors and a fleet ready for every stage of your training. From single engine faster than traditional programs. Our state-of-the-art simulators cut learning curves, while immersive ground school turns complex theory into confident decision-making. Graduate job-ready with airline-preferred partnerships and financing options that keep your budget and
Caracas.
your cockpit is
Venezuela.
Visit USAviation.com.
Between 2013 and 2025, Venezuela's economy shrank by roughly 75%. One of the worst peacetime collapses in modern history. The bolivar has been redenominated 3 times, and black market rates hover near 95 per dollar as the bloc is desperate. Digital payments and cryptocurrency just keep basic trade alive. Meanwhile, the physical backbone of the country is falling apart. Oil pipelines rupture daily. The Paraguay refinery complex limps along at less than 15% capacity. And Washington's 2025 decision to brand the Venezuelan military a terrorist organization marked the first time in U.S. history an entire armed force was criminalized under anti-terror laws. Add to this the foreign presence, an estimated 100 to 200 Russian military